Hello, and welcome to today's Back to Basics show. I am Rico Burton, and I volunteer with AARP Arizona. AARP is the nation's largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to empowering people 50 and older to choose how they live as they age. With a nationwide presence, AARP strengthens communities and advocates for what matters most to the more than 100 million Americans 50 plus and their families. This includes health security, financial stability, and personal fulfillment. AARP also produces the nation's largest circulation publications, AARP the magazine and AARP Bulletin. Make sure you take a look at some of the older issues of that because they're classic and the information is always relevant. In the months of August and September, we raise awareness among adults age 50 plus of the critical link between sleep and brain health. Despite knowing the benefits of improved sleep, many older adults resist taking steps to address their sleep issues. AARP encourages people to prioritize their brain health by improving sleep habits for better sleep quality. AARP resources, including the Brain Health Resource Center and Staying Sharp, help consumers to build better sleep habits for brain health. Visit us at the URL that you will see across the screen. Today we are with Coach SheriAnne, and we are going to talk about mental health. How you doing, Coach?
Hi, Lady B. I'm doing well. And along those lines of sleep, we have covered sleep here many times on Back to Basics. And so if you want to go and look at the archives of Back to Basics, you'll see one, maybe you'll see more than one on sleep. I know that we did one, I believe, I want to say it was May, might have been March. It was an M month, but we did sleep. So it is so incredibly important to focus on your sleep. And yeah, it does impact your mental well-being and your mental health, which we are talking about today. And so what I first want, what's that, hun? Go ahead.
Oh, I wanted to add for those of you who are not sleeping and welcome here today, make sure that you please put your name and where you're from in the comments. And if you have any questions, put them on the screen for us, please, and we'll try to get to them. If Coach isn't able to get to them today, she will circle back and make sure that she responds. Hi there, Betty from Chicago. Welcome, welcome, welcome. All right, Coach, go ahead.
Definitely. Thank you for mentioning that. So first of all, let's clarify mental well-being versus mental health, because, you can have good mental well-being, but still struggle with mental health. You might have a mental illness, but you might have good mental well-being. And there's no set definition for mental well-being. And that's kind of what we'll dive into today. We're going to talk a little bit about what mental illness is, how it happens, reducing the stigma of it, because it's just got such a staunch stigma around it. And it shouldn't, because so many people are struggling with mental well-being, and a lot of people actually have mental illnesses, and it should be talked about more openly. So just because you have good mental well-being doesn't mean you're always happy and unaffected by your experiences, because we're all affected. So just definitely wanted to clear that up right away. But you'd be surprised at how many people, and I've talked about this before on Back to Basics, since COVID, how many people are struggling with mental health because of all of the uh, uh, isolating, I can't even think of the word right now. I was going to say sequestering, but that's not the word I want to
That
use.
kind of works too.
Yeah. But it's mental health. And so what I really want to help start here, and you can actually Google this phrase and you'll see it, but it's no science, no stigma, and no in the KNOW. So know your science around mental health, and it'll help create no stigma. And so it's really important because, it used to be 1 in 5 live with a mental illness, and 18% of that used to be children. And now the statistics are much, much higher. And I don't want to quote them because I don't know exactly what they are, but I do know that it is rather staggering. So first and foremost, how do we reduce the stigma of it? And that's having a healthy dialogue around it, and diminishing that it's such a bad thing, and knowing the facts about what mental illness is, what causes it. If you know the facts, then you reduce that stigma as well. Be aware of your own attitude towards that. because when we have attitude, we have a tendency to be very judgmental. And focus and just educating yourself and focusing on the positive. Choose your words carefully. Um, it's important that when you're dealing with someone, or if you yourself, that you separate the person from the mental illness. They are not that mental illness. They are separate from that. And if you can do that, it would be wonderful. And so when I say choose your words carefully, if someone is talking about I'm bipolar, it's more I have bipolar. And it's you have an illness. It's not that doesn't define you. And when you're talking about somebody else that has a mental illness, it's important to not define them as that. They just happen to have that, because if we can do that, we're choosing empowerment over shame over something. So does that all make, I mean, it's really important
It
to,
makes sense when you hear it, but it's a mouthful. I will tell you, it is a
oh,
mouthful. Trying to separate the person from the predicament, if you will, is easier said than done, because many times what happens is whatever a person is going through will manifest itself through their behaviors, and that's what we see.
yep,
That's what we have to deal with. And for you to tell me, well, I'm bipolar, I said, yeah, but you're out here acting mean and doing this and doing the other. That is more relevant, I guess, to me right now than to say,
mhm,
oh, and to give a person a pass, if you will. So I think that that's one of the things that comes up.
for sure. And I totally appreciate you saying that, because I try to help people look at it as not giving them a pass, but having some grace and opening up conversation about, I understand that you're behaving this way, and it doesn't define who you are, but it is impacting how you're being viewed. And an amazing resource online is NAMI, NAMI, and that's National Alliance of Mental Illness. They have groups for people that live with someone with mental illness so that they can help understand that person, but also not perpetuate and increase the problems, but also know how to communicate with them, help them work through it. And because the thing is when someone has a physical injury or a physical illness, we see that it's very, very visible. And it's very easy for someone to go ask for help if they have an illness or an injury. But if you're dealing with something internally in a mental illness, something that you can't see and it's not tangible, it's really hard to ask for help. And so if you're the person that's dealing with it, I'm going to continue to encourage you to, there's so many resources. NAMI is a great one. AARP has resources. Ask your closest confidant for help. And if you're someone that's dealing with someone that has a mental illness, same resources for you. Because mental illness can look a lot of different ways. It can be something as, and I don't want to say simple because it's not simple, but something that's like anxiety. Anxiety is considered a mental illness. And having bipolar, having ADHD is considered a mental illness. PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. And then there's also chronic. It's a little c in front of PTSD. And that's been identified in the last few years. That's a new form of PTSD. And if someone's antisocial, if they're facing depression, eating disorders, even what we call SAD, seasonal affect disorder. If you're in a place where it's constantly gloomy outside, you can have seasonal affect disorder. Schizophrenia. I mean, the list goes on and on. Someone that's suicidal. Those are all mental illnesses that you can't necessarily see on the outside. It gets displayed through behavior and internal emotions.
And it's not always easy to recognize them. I appreciate Darlene from our viewers here. She says, I think that everything is being called a mental illness, and sometimes it minimizes real mental illness. She went on to say that you have to set boundaries for someone with a real mental illness. Her son has schizophrenia, and she has learned how to set boundaries for sure. And that is very, very encouraging to read. And it goes right along with what you said before that, about mental illness. We have to be careful. Mental illness, mental health, or mental well being are different. We have to make sure that we're looking at them appropriately, I suppose.
Yes, absolutely. Because and I love that you said that you set boundaries with your son, because when you are dealing with someone that does have a mental illness, whether they are or are not seeking help, it is important that you do set boundaries for yourself. And that's why if you're living with or in a relationship with or helping someone with mental illness, that you seek out resources to help you understand how to be around that person. Because sometimes they cannot control it. Like it's as simple as they will have it's brain chemistry is what causes a lot of this. And yes, we can take drugs, and yes, we can do a lot of therapy, dialect behavior therapy. We can do all kinds of things to help with mental illnesses, but sometimes it's still very, very challenging. And so it is important to set boundaries for yourself. Uh,
John
and
Jackson here. Oh, I'm sorry.
no,
Yeah,
go ahead.
John Jackson here. He says that if mental illness is such a massive issue, has anyone pinpointed the root cause of the issue?
I love that question, John. That is great. The thing with mental illness is it is very, very complicated for everyone due to brain chemistry. We're all very different. We all have different, you know, blend of chemicals, running through our brain, and it can be a combination of factors, such as your genetics, your environment, traumas, if you've faced past traumas, a current trauma, your lifestyle, and just simply your brain chemistry. So there's a lot. So no, it's to pinpoint it would be next to impossible. They can find a combination for certain types of mental illnesses, but it's usually a combination of things that usually cause it,
And
unfortunately.
there are so many different contexts that go along with this because truthfully we have to look at gender. There are different things that happen in people's bodies and brains based on gender, based on age, based on geography. You mentioned being sad in a place that's always gloomy. All of those things come in. I'm going to throw another one at you that makes it challenging to deal with mental illness and mental well-being, and that is our religious beliefs. Many people in different cultures believe that whomever their being is supposed to be able to take care of this. If we only believe, if we have faith, then all is going to be well. And so we don't go outside of our faith, if you will, to try to get assistance. There's another part that leads to the stigma.
Oh, that totally. What it does is that falls right under people feel judged, and they perceive it's perceived as a weakness, and yeah, and definitely religion can play a massive role in that, in the sense of like, this is going to be taken care of for me. And sometimes that's not the case. Your chemistry in your brain is not going to just automatically shift, and so it's important to understand that you can do things that help, but understanding that chemistry in your brain too helps a little bit. So we know that we have I'm sure everyone on that's watching this has heard of serotonin, dopamine, adrenaline, oxytocin. These are all the chemicals that are in your brain, and then we have the hormones that also play a role, like you said, gender specific. Like then we have all of that plays a role in our mental well-being. And so, but understanding, so serotonin is your mood regulator, and it is what keeps you calm. That's what does make you feel like you have a good well-being. You're happy, and you can get serotonin, releasing in your body through exercise. That's a a common source of getting good serotonin. Being out in the sun actually helps with your serotonin. So understanding what serotonin is, then dopamine. Dopamine is our feel good, our pleasure, motivation. It also helps with memory and motor skills. And you can get a dopamine dump when if you're big into social media and you're a big poster, and you post something and you get all these likes and all these comments back. That's going to give you a massive dopamine dump. Or if you are participating in recreational drugs, that's going to give you a dopamine dump. Gambling, you go gamble and you win big dopamine dump. So it's important to understand what dopamine does as well. And you can get that by eating foods rich in like beef, pork, chicken. That's really, it's L-tyrosine. That's the amino acid that you're looking for to help with dopamine. Then we have adrenaline. So adrenaline is our adrenals, which is right pretty much above our kidneys. And so those are that hormone gets released, that chemical gets released when it's a fight or flight, and it's our stay safe, and so if something happens, that gets released because it's like uh, you're trying to figure out, survival or what. So that's our stay safe chemical, and that's epinephrine, and so it's fight or flight. Then oxytocin. If you've ever had a baby, you know what oxytocin is. It's our warm, fuzzy, that's our love hormone. And so that's oozes out of a lot of pregnant women and new mommies. It's our connection, chemical that surges through our brains. And enjoyment activities actually release a lot of oxytocin, and oxytocin is released a lot when you sleep. That's why sleep is so important too. But those are the main chemicals that can impact mental illness, mental well-being, and so it's important along those lines to understand just kind of what they do and what can impact those. And that's why I really try to make sure people are aware of these little mini computers that we carry around, that they understand the dopamine dump and the serotonin that happens when we're on those.
Philip Smith asks, can you comment on how different behaviors can have various mental illness causes and get confused by unaware?
Can you comment on how different behaviors can have various mental illness causes? I'm sorry, Philip. I'm not sure I'm quite understanding the question. Are you understanding it, Lady B?
No, not really. I think, but if we turn some words around here, because various mental illnesses really are the things that end up having different behaviors. I think the behaviors come from the illness. It's not the other way around. I don't think we have the behavior and then come up with an illness. So, and it is because we're unaware of things that are going on, and then people behave a certain way. We're not really clear, understand. Can you just comment on how that's impactful to us individually and collectively when people are unaware of what mental health looks like, mental illness is, and then they see these behaviors in people, and but a mental illness may be the cause. Does that help?
Yes, I think, and Philip, that's what you're going after. I think that's what perpetuates the stigma. People are associating the behavior with to the person rather than associating that behavior to their mental illness. And that's where I was saying earlier about trying to separate the person from the illness. But within that, you're not giving them a pass. It just offers you the opportunity to have some grace and less judgment, and maybe being able to have come from a space of helping them and supporting them to not behave a certain way if it's impacting their well-being. Because you can have a mental illness but have good well-being. You can have a mental illness, such as anxiety and wanting to be antisocial, but you actually put yourself in situations where you're going to be like, okay, today I'm going to do the exercise of going to a coffee shop and saying hello to two people. And for a lot of people that are antisocial, that will shoot their anxiety through the roof. But they do the practice of being mindful of it and putting themselves out there. And before they do that, they might do a whole relaxation technique for themselves and then insert themselves into a mindfulness activity. But yeah, I think that when people are associating behaviors to the person and not to the illness, that's where the stigma comes in and a lot of judgment comes into play.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Philip, if that's not really what you meant to ask, feel free to put your question back into the comments and we'll read it as you write it. All right. Thanks so much. I don't want to miss out on any more of your tips. What else do you
Yeah,
have for us?
let's dive into the tips to improve your mental well-being. And so, number one is exercise. Make sure that you're moving your body and getting good blood flow and getting that serotonin and dopamine release with exercise, and keeping it as even keel as possible in your brain. So, exercise is tip number one. Tip number two, no surprise, is sleep. Make sure you're sleeping 7 to 9 hours a night. If you're getting less than seven, you're really fudging, like I try to get as close to seven as possible. Sometimes I just go ahead and wake up and I'm like in the high six range, but you really want to get 7 to 9 hours of sleep. And the next tip three, is what I just talked about, practicing mindfulness. and practicing your relaxation techniques. And when I talk about mindfulness, we've done shows on Back to Basics on mindfulness, but it's really getting in touch with your five senses and really creating a relaxation techniques within, which we've done before, within mindfulness, whether it be breathing exercises or really paying attention to your surroundings and seeing what senses you can feel coming and just being present with all of those feelings within your body. Then tip number 4 is going to reduce your screen time. It's so hard for so many people. It's unbelievable. But I promise you, if you spend some time in nature and reduce your screen time, you will feel so much better being out in nature. And I know it's hot here, but do it. Our mornings are actually turning out to be quite lovely right now. And or in the evening, and so get out in nature. And if you're not here in Arizona and fighting, battling the heat, wherever you are, just spend some time outside. Reduce it, put that phone down, leave it be. Everything will be there when you come back to it, and you can address it at that time. But just be disciplined and take your eyes away from the screen and go be outside. So tip number 5 is connect with others. And that can look any way you would like it, whether it's if you're connecting with people at your job, great. If you work from home and you're isolated because you're not going into an office, then take time to go to lunch with a friend or go get coffee or join an activity. If you have passion in knitting, find a knitting group or go take dancing classes, whatever it may be. But go connect with others. And you can find groups on Meetup. AARP has a whole host of things that you can do, or just go volunteer. But connecting with
Right.
others is a huge part of your mental well-being. Doing for others will fill your cup over and over and over. So just connect with others. And if you're having a hard time figuring out how to do that, I always say volunteer. And there's plenty of places that you can volunteer. And if it's humans that drive you, give you anxiety, go volunteer at a pet shelter. But just go give your time to something else, and it will be amazing. So next,
AARP always has opportunities for you to volunteer. So wherever you are in the nation, there's an AARP near you. Reach out and see what you can do. There may be things in the office you can do. You can volunteer on teams and be part of events. There's a multitude of things that you can do that will be outside yourself. And the being altruistic really does make a difference. The rewards that come along the way are they're just it leaves me speechless. You feel so much better about helping other people. And when you take a look at yourself, you think, huh, maybe my life is not so bad.
so true. So true. All right. The next tip is to practice gratitude. And I wake up and I go to bed with the same, this is a discipline that's ingrained in me. And it makes everything, so I sleep better and I wake up happier and ready to start my day. So practicing gratitude. And it can be as simple as I'm glad I woke up today and I'm ready to put my 2 feet on the floor and let's go. And not knowing what's going to come in front of me, but just being grateful for your health, the people in your lives that, bring joy to you. It could be anything, but just practice gratitude. And I encourage you to do it at the end of your day and at the beginning of your day.
I
It really,
encourage people to do it throughout the day.
oh,
Do it
yes.
throughout the day. Some little things. I can be at going shopping and I'll be like, Lord, I need a parking space. And I look up and I find something. I'm grateful for the parking space that when it's 97 degrees here and I don't want to walk real far. Like, thank you, Lord, for giving me a parking space not so far away. And if I don't find one, I still find a way to be grateful. Thank you,
Yeah.
Lord, for giving me the legs to be able to walk inside. Either way it
Oh,
goes, I'm grateful.
definitely. It makes a big difference in that's where well-being comes into play. It makes a big difference in our attitude towards everything. So, okay, tip number 7 is to set goals. It's really important to have, and it could be something it's super simple, learning a new recipe, but set a goal, set something that you want to achieve, and I would say daily, set something you want to do today or weekly. You can do big goals monthly, annual, any way you want it to look. But set goals. It's wonderful when we're striving towards something rather than just aimlessly going about things. And it could be finishing a project today that you had started, yesterday or whatever. But just have goals, because when we're moving towards something, it's much more engaging for us. So set goals. And our last tip, our eighth tip, is to find ways to be curious and creative. Learn every day something. And that is one thing that I have always impressed upon my children, in the sense of be humble and be curious. And because if you're constantly learning, you're improving your well-being, because you're curious about things and you're not stagnant. And it's important to be always growing, because if you're not growing, what's next. Yeah.
Absolutely. If you're not growing, you're not going. So
Right. So be curious and be creative. Be eager to learn something and be 1% better tomorrow than you were today.
it was mentioned, and Darlene, Coach went over this early on, so I'm going to ask her to just kind of recap. She said it's important that we understand the difference between mental illness and mental well-being. Do you want to recap that for somebody that maybe came in a little later, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing is we don't really have a strict definition to mental well-being. And someone could be, just because you have good mental well-being doesn't mean you're happy about everything and that you don't get disrupted by the experiences, or you're unaffected by the experiences in your life. But you can have a mental illness but still have good mental well-being. You're functioning well, you're connecting with other people. So mental illness doesn't mean you have a poor mental well-being. But it's mental illness is when someone is definitely dealing with a chemical imbalance, traumatic issues, and they're working through that, but they can have a good mental well-being in the process.
Mental well-being, I also understand, is having the opportunity in your own life and the understanding in your own life to be able to cope with whatever comes your way. Using many of the tips perhaps that you gave us. So being able to function and do it in a way that is good for us, that's going to help us be at a place of peace, a place of calm, and the rest. I'm going to just add that in there if that's all right.
Oh, of course, absolutely. I love your additions. And a lot of it too is good mental well-being is we all get derailed. Everyone gets derailed at some point in the day. And it happens every day. But being able to get back on the rails is where your mental well-being comes into play. And being able to sleep well helps you cope. Exercise, doing all of the things that I list. And I saw that somebody asked if I could does that list somewhere. I'll go into the Facebook and I'll put them all in there. I'll type them out. And Lovely, our producer, always puts them on the screen as well. But I'll go in there and do that for you. But yeah, it's mental well-being is about when you're derailed, how quickly can you get back on the rails?
John had put into the chat that if we're honest, it's obvious we live in a very dysfunctional world, evidenced by all the conflicts, divisiveness, and disparity on so many levels. And being aware of these facts, it can be hard for me to focus only on my own well being when I'm surrounded by so much dysfunction. John, let me tell you, I certainly agree with you. But my attitude about that is if I fix me, because I can't do anything about you, coach, or anybody else. But if I try to make me as whole as possible before I leave home, I will add less to whatever dysfunction I'm going to encounter. I may be able to cope with and deal with and help others with whatever situations I encounter. So I can only work on me and fix Lady B. And then if I bring me as whole as possible to the table, hopefully it'll make it a better world if everybody did that. Work on you.
Yes. Yep.
Yes.
There's a great saying like, I will work on me for you, you work on you for me. And it's about controlling the controllables. You can control your reaction, your response, and because there's a difference between reacting to something and responding to something appropriately. You are the only person that can control that. And if you come to the table, come to a situation where you're controlling your controllables, you will offer so much more than becoming a victim to circumstances.
Right, because it's very, very easy to look at everything going wrong. Because I know I do it on occasion too. And it's like, Lord, why, Lord, why? But if we know that hard times are going to come just like good times are going to come. When every time we look back 30 years, we say those were the good old days, even though so much was happening. But what back then, we'll be doing the same thing now because it's going to be crazy, crazy, crazy. All
Yeah.
right, Coach, we have run out of time. Viewers, we want to say thank you so much for being with us here today. Thank you so much for your comments and for inputting so much information and for sharing, being transparent with us and sharing your stories. It's going to help not only you, but it's going to help somebody else. Make sure that you go to the website for AARP. You will find this video. It will be uploaded for you to watch again or to share with other people. If you have any other questions for Coach, put them in the chat, put them on the website. She will get back to you. It's part of what she does. She looks so forward to it. Thank you, thank you, thank you again. We look forward to seeing you again sometime soon. Next couple of weeks, I guess it will be. Yes. Take
September 10th.
care and God bless.
Thank you.